was 45 years old when I was diagnosed. I found out I had a myxoid liposarcoma. It is a rare tumor that they found in my thigh. I went to the doctor for a kidney stone, and I met the doctor for a kidney stone, and he shoots me up and said, pain goes away, and goes, come back in 2 weeks. And I come back in 2 weeks, and as we were going through all this stuff, I just asked him about a lump on my leg. And so he said, I have no idea, I'm a urologist, but we'll find someone to help you with that. And within 24 hours, he had 2 doctors on a speakerphone, and he had already had me tested, and kind of we knew pretty much right away. We were just waiting to test it, to biopsy it. But that was kind of how we found out. It was just by accident. At the time when it first got diagnosed, I don't know, it was a mess. You find out you got cancer, and you're just like, you think it's a death sentence, and you're like, okay, what do we do from here? But as we got started and things calmed down, you started realizing that you live with this. You live with it. It's just something you got to do. The hardest part going through the whole process was probably letting people do things for you. That was probably the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to let the doctors do what they do, let the nurses do what they do, let your parents do what they do, let your family do what they do. And the hardest part is not being able to do anything and just letting it take place. And that, I learned I had a lot of friends, and a lot of friends of friends, and a lot of friends of friends of friends, and it never ended. It was just like more people showed up, more like people calling and texting and writing and stopping by and, hey, I heard this, I heard that, friends from a long time ago, friends from a friend from wherever. You meet people who are doing radiation, they're doing chemo, they're doing it twice a day. This one lady I met, she drove in from, her husband drove her in from Indiana and drove her in every day and drove her in, and then they stayed here during the week and then went back on weekends. Well, we were kind of so I saw her every morning, and it was fun just talking to her about her kids and all that stuff. But that was the joy of seeing her doing this and going through it. And then it made mine, I don't know, I always felt like mine was easy. That's because there were people struggling with this, and I always felt like we're gonna get through this. And stay positive. I think a positive attitude is the biggest thing, because if you exude it, everyone else exudes it. And the best advice I got was, you're gonna live with it. Just live with it. So that was probably the best advice, it wasn't a death sentence. You live with it, you get through it. I was used to being the leader. While I had to sit there, I couldn't be the leader, and that was the hardest thing to give up. I don't know, enjoy today, because tomorrow's a gift.
I was 14, just about to turn 15, and it's a neuroendocrine cancer. I was playing football, and I got a concussion the 7th game of the season. The next day, my stomach's hurting real bad. I can't even stand up. Everything's hurting. My head hurts. I end up going to the ER, and they're like, yeah, you have a concussion, but on top of that, you have appendicitis. Within 24 hours, I had the appendectomy, was out of the hospital, and 10 days later, the doctor called my mom and said, we found a tumor in his appendix. The tumor's big enough that I think we need to go in and do like a major surgery. And I think both of my parents were more scared than I was. I was kind of like, my response was, okay, can we do the surgery tonight? Like, let's get this over with, like, let's go. And I think I waited 2 weeks before I had the surgery. Before I had the surgery, he kind of told us, chemo and radiation won't be an option for the type of cancer it is. So really all you can do is just kind of watch and wait. And I had the surgery, and it was rough, and I wasn't there. I was in the hospital too long, but it was not a good stay. When they told me, the first thing that was going through my head was, well, I'm thinking back 10 days ago, I'm thinking, if I hadn't gotten that concussion at football, I wouldn't have went to the ER for that terrible stomach ache. And they wouldn't have known I had appendicitis. My appendix would have burst with the tumor in it, cancer all over my body. I would have been dead. I wouldn't be sitting here right now. And so I kind of realized, that was God. That was Him looking down on me. And that's something I think about every day. That kind of made me feel safe. That I felt like I was walking with God then. The advice I would give to another cancer patient, and I know it sounds like a cliche, but stay strong And I mean that in a way that, you know, not just for yourself, but for the people around you, because, you know, people hear cancer and they get scared, and they're gonna hear you have cancer. It's gonna scare them, and they're gonna walk with fear, and you can't walk with fear, because when you stay strong and you stay positive, it's not only gonna help yourself, but more importantly, it's gonna help the people around you. I definitely think this diagnosis has turned me into a different person for the better. Obviously, yeah, you know, it sucks. Who wants to be diagnosed with cancer? But it's definitely changed me for the better in a lot of ways. So yes, it's made me more positive and more strong.
When I was diagnosed, I was 19 years old, and I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is a childhood cancer that kids my age do not typically get. I kept on getting sick, which I thought was very strange, and as time went on, I kind of just dealt with the sickness. My lymph nodes would swell up, and I thought that was a little weird. I kind of thought it was mono or something like that. And I finally went to school. It was the start of my freshman year at Baldwin Wallace, and our fall lacrosse was starting up. And I went to the warm-up lap for lacrosse, and I was just dead. I felt like a vampire. I knew there was something wrong. So I went to the BW doctor. They took blood counts and all that, and they saw my all my liver enzymes were real elevated, and my white blood cell count was real elevated. They thought that was strange, so they just said go back home and relax for a couple days and don't go to classes. So that's what I did. Went back to the doctor again. Blood counts were still elevated, and then a little time went on. They said go see an oncologist. At that point, I didn't know what an oncologist was. Yeah, I went back to school and then went back to the oncologist, got blood taken. I was feeling really confident. Nothing's happening. I'm fixed. I'm good to go. And I was hanging out in my dorm room with my friends, watching Netflix, doing homework, and my oncologist calls me and he's like, Jake, are you sitting down? I have some news. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? I'm sitting down. He's like, well, you have leukemia. And my jaw just dropped and I didn't really know what to think. My treatment, it lasted 3.5 years, and it was different rounds. The first round was an introduction phase where I was given prednisone. The first year is very high intense, like I'll lose all my hair and I look very, very sick. But after that year, it goes into a maintenance phase, which is a 2.5-year process. I go in once a month and I get a spinal tap and other various forms of chemotherapy. I was taking prednisone, and what happened was the large amounts of prednisone causes avascular necrosis, which is basically when you lose major blood flow from all your joints. And in my right knee, it was the worst. And basically my knee just started to die and break apart. And this past March 14th, I got a total knee replacement, and then I got rods going up my femur and down my tibia. And then just started physical therapy, and now I'm here. Sports have always been a huge, huge part of my life. And I think having that sports mentality definitely played a huge role in going through chemotherapy, because I kind of made the whole treatment like one big lacrosse game, and just how to deal with that. I broke it up and had some overtime and had to just deal with the blows as they come, just like in any other game you play.
When I was 54 years old, I was diagnosed with endometrial cancer. You know, endometrial cancer is a gynecological cancer, and so I had not had a period for a really long time, and suddenly I found that I was bleeding. So, and all women should know that if that ever happens to you, you should go straight to the doctor. So thankfully that's what I did. When I went for a biopsy, the doctor said to me, I always like you to know as soon as I know. So she asked me for various times she could call me over the next few days when she might get the results. So one of the times that I gave her turned out to be a time my husband and I were in the car driving from Cleveland to Columbus, and that was when she called. And so we were in Columbus traffic, and we were trying to get on the speakerphone, and all this stuff was going on, and I was finding out that I had cancer right amidst all of that, and it was very crazy. The treatment for that is really a hysterectomy, and it's just surgery, and if you're lucky, it can just all be taken out and then you're done, and thankfully, really, really thankfully, that's what happened to me. It's a cancer that kind of comes with a cure, but none of that really matters when the doctor's sitting there telling you, you know, you have cancer. I mean, I think the fear factor just really goes through the roof. One of the doctors said to me, you know, fear is something that all cancer patients face, all cancer survivors have it, In fact, everyone has fear. And so he said to me, you know, your job right now is to figure out what you're going to do with your fear. And, you know, I have these two amazing kids. They coincidentally agreed to sing a duet in church on Christmas Eve. And so they were getting up there and they were getting ready to sing, and I pulled out my cell phone and I recorded it, and I thought, oh, that was so lovely, and didn't really give it that much more thought. Then it was March, and I was getting this diagnosis, and I was, you know, afraid for my life and didn't know what was going to happen. And all of a sudden, after that comment was made to me, I thought, oh, wait a minute, I think I have something I could do with my fear. And I took out the phone and I listened to this song, you know. And first I looked at my phone and there were my beautiful children, their beautiful faces, their amazing voices, and then with the message of the words of the song, and the message was, surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. And so for me to get that message from my children in their voices, going through a time of a lot of fear, I always felt like no matter what was happening, if I could remember that message, that I would get the support that I needed.
I was 48 and I had triple positive breast cancer. I found out I had cancer from a routine mammogram. I had been going since I was 40, every year. That August I had gone for my routine mammogram and left the hospital, and a couple days later got a letter in the mail that they wanted me to come back, and I had never received that letter before. So there was a little bit of concern, but friends and sisters had reassured me that that's pretty common to get called back for a repeat. So I went back for a repeat, and then they wanted me to do an ultrasound immediately. And then they said, now we want you to do a biopsy. And then the biopsy revealed the cancer. I felt shocked. I still feel shocked. I still can't believe it happened. It's just surreal, I guess. Every time I sat in the chair to have chemo, I kept thinking they were going to come in and tell me it was a mistake, you can go now. I would say the hardest part was telling the kids. I chickened out a few nights. We decided we needed to tell them, and it didn't go very good, but that was probably the worst part. That class that they teach you everything you need to know about chemo, and they give you the worst case scenario. And I do remember leaving there in tears and saying, I can't do this. But I do understand they have to give you the worst picture. And for me, it wasn't the doom and gloom that I thought it would be. I really found joy knowing that I was getting one step closer to having this behind me. So I didn't really mind sitting in the chemo chair, even though you're hooked up to nasty stuff, and I knew I was going to have 3 or 4 days of feeling lousy. In my mind, I was thinking, I'm one step closer to having this out of me. Even though it was out of me when I had the surgery, this was one step closer to having this whole journey, that they call it, over. I remember my doctor telling me that cancer would be in my face for a full year, and I thought, what the heck is he talking about? But it really, really was. It was like a part-time job. So there's a lot of patience involved. My future is bright. Everything is done except for that pill that I take every day for the next 9 years or so. I'm cancer-free and feeling great, and just going to put this behind me.
I was 38 years old and I had breast cancer. I was getting ready to take the kids for trick-or-treat, and I was in the shower and felt a lump, and so I went to the doctor and found out it was breast cancer after that. Well, initially they were going to do a lumpectomy, and I really wanted more, but with the timing it was around Thanksgiving, and so that's the only thing I could get scheduled for. And so they did the lumpectomy. They ran the tissue and gave me the idea of what it was, and then from there I did have the double mastectomy. I decided to go that route, and with reconstruction, which was a series of several surgeries. The kids were great. I tried not to impact them as much as I possibly could. My youngest was 18 months old, so my mom kind of took care of her during the process, which was wonderful. I think my son was in 5th grade and my daughter was in 3rd grade, going through treatment. And they, they just kept going with their everyday lives and would ask questions. I would give advice of take care of yourself. That's something I never did before. I was always so busy with everything, and so take care of yourself, and that do yoga or meditate, or spend time looking at the trees, or do something for yourself instead of running to and fro. I was always busy with the kids, and now I do much better at taking care of myself. I would say I learned to trust God more than I ever have. I've always been a believer in God, but through this process, I really started to trust and know that whether it was good or it was bad, whatever happened here, He was with me, and it was going that route. And I mean, that has just been the biggest thing for me during this process. And during everything, there was just signs, and signs that He was with me, He was walking with me. And even I was baptized during chemotherapy, and after I was baptized, we were driving home and there was a rainbow. And I mean, just weird things like that. I'm not gonna cry, but anyway, I just wanted to thank my family and friends for going through this journey with me, because I think so much as cancer patients, we get all the attention. We go to the appointments, we go to the treatments, we get people caring for us, and it's our loved ones that worry and they suffer. They suffer more than we do, but we get the attention. So, thank you. Thanks to everybody that was there and kept it together.
I was 38. I was diagnosed with DCIS, which is stage 0, which I actually did not even know that existed. I went to the doctor because my sister was diagnosed 3 months prior.
I was 36 when I was diagnosed. I landscape for a living, and I was on the job site, and I put on a backpack blower, and I felt something over here, and it kind of hurt. So I went home later that day and gave myself a self breast exam, and I felt a lump, and I called Jenny. I was like, hey, I feel a lump, and she's like, well, we're fibrocystic. She's like, I probably wouldn't worry about it, but call Dr. Naples and get into the, have him check it out. So we did the mammogram and the ultrasound. Next thing I know, I'm getting a biopsy. Next thing I know, they're telling me I have invasive ductal carcinoma, stage 1, and it's triple positive with HER2, which makes it really aggressive.
I was diagnosed when I was 36, the day before Thanksgiving. I found the lump myself. My husband had lost his job of 17 years a month before, and I found the lump and didn't go to the doctors because of insurance purposes. So kind of put it off, and then ended up going in November, and I was HER2 positive as well, progesterone positive, stage 3, and it had spread to my lymph nodes.
I was 33 at the age of my breast cancer diagnosis, and I found mine myself. We had no cancer history in our family or anything, so I eventually had gone to my OB, and they still just thought it's probably just a cyst or something, you're only 33, there's no history. So then they sent me for a mammogram, from the mammogram to the ultrasound, and then from there to get a biopsy. And I still, I went and had the biopsy by myself. I was kind of like, okay, nobody really seems too concerned. It's probably nothing. And then I think maybe when the general surgeon said, when we have your results, can your husband come with you? I kind of knew, like, okay, like, this is pretty serious.
I guess you could say cancer has its good things about it too, in the aspect I don't think any of us would have been in each other's lives if it wasn't for that. So I definitely think it's a bond that you naturally have. I think I've known you guys 1 year, but I feel like I could call them, tell them, do anything. You hear cancer and you think everybody's heart sinks. You immediately feel so overwhelmed, and it is so scary. But there are some things that come out of it that you're like, well, this was good. This was a good thing that came out of it. You know, if it's the relationships you build or how strong you are as a person, or, you know, so hopefully you can be there for someone else. I mean, the organization you guys have done, just, you know, it almost gives you a fuller life to fill, you know, and something you even want, you know, it almost gives you more love to just want to share.
Jenny has a t-shirt company. It's free to be. She makes t-shirts, motivational t-shirts. And on my last Herceptin, Shayna bought me a t-shirt, Aaron a t-shirt, and they both came to my treatment. And when they came in there, I was like, oh my gosh. It was just, it's unexplainable.
Like 3 years before this, Shayna to me was just a girl in front of me that was dropping her kid off at school. You know, I never thought in a million years that we would all be doing this.
And I watched you. I watched you bald. And like
dropping my kindergartner off.
Yeah, dropping your kid off. And my heart hurt every time I saw her. I had no idea who she was. And then I saw you at a baseball game and I was like seeking her out. Like, I just want to go talk to her. And little did I know that I would be talking to her almost every day.
My sister got diagnosed and she's my little sister. So when it's your little sister, you're just like, hey, I got you, sis. Like, don't you worry. We are going through this together. Well, I didn't really think we were gonna go through it together. Okay, so I reached out to anybody and everybody. I'm a hairdresser. I talk for a living, and I talk to and if you know me, if something's going on in my life, I just quiz everybody. I need to know about everything. So even though I hadn't been diagnosed, she had been diagnosed, I was finding out about everything and everybody. And I actually heard about Aaron through a trainer I was going to. And me and the trainer kind of said, these two need to meet.
They've been through exactly what I went through. So when I was laying in bed so sick, didn't want to move, didn't want to do another chemo, I would text these guys and they would make me feel better. Plus they were doing so great and they looked so great after everything. If they could do it and they had the strength, I knew I could too.
My family and friends gave me hope. My kids, especially, and my husband, I would look at them and keep fighting because I wanted to give up, you know, especially when you're sick from chemo.
I think the biggest thing for me that gave me hope was probably my faith. Not only, you know, had I just been given the most horrible news that you can be given. I remember right after my diagnosis, I'm on the phone with my best friend and she's like, oh my gosh, like, why are you not freaking out right now? You know, I never said, why me? Why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to us? I always said, why not me? You know, I have strong faith. I have a strong family. I have awesome friends. I have awesome kids.
Let your family and friends help you. Let them do the things they want to do for you. Don't try to keep up with everything still. Let them come clean your house. Let them make you dinners. Let them help you with the children. Let them.
My oncologist said to me, I'm like, can I beat this? Can I do it? She said, absolutely, you can do it. And I sat there for a second and she said, the line at Target doesn't seem so long anymore, does it? Mm-hmm. When you stare at your own mortality in its face at a young age,
makes you realize
life-changing.
We all work out together. We motivate each other. When, you know, Shayna's yelling at us on the spin bikes and I'm like, oh, I can't go any further. And I look over Kristen and she's still pedaling and I'm like, wait a minute. We've gone through all this together. Like, we can get through this 1 hour spin class with Shayna screaming at us.
You hope that anyone going through cancer can is never alone.
Right.
And so I think that if you ask me, the one thing is I never felt alone.
Our kids, her girls and my little girl and boy went to Bible school together, vacation Bible school this summer. And her daughter came up to my daughter and said, my mommy had breast cancer too. Do you want to be my friend? It's just fun too.
I'm a stronger person because of all three of these ladies, for sure. I'm a better person.